are these people?
I think you guys remember, like I did a rant on how, like for a time, like the boutique called people who made a critique, on like, the squad, Bernie, whoever, like nihilist. Um, I did a rant on that months ago.
Mm.
And now it seems to be the phrase now that people are calling each other if you kind of critique somewhat of a lefty figure or policy, especially if it may be within the right wing who are kind of saying these policies, is a fake leftist. Case in
Yes.
point, I got called a fake leftist last week.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not gonna say who, but
Which is like,
I
what does
think
that
you guys
even
are.
mean? What does that even mean?
It wasn't
Like,
even me, but it was in the context of what was said. It was just kind of random and just kind of like kind of out there.
mm,
But I kind of figured now since Briahna Joy Gray is now being called a fake leftist now, I think that might be the phrase du jour that the boutique left is using to kind of undermine people who, who or quote unquote seemingly like aligning with the right wing, whatever that means.
yeah.
So actually, Reef, I think you might need to remove one of these screens. There we go.
Yeah, I was about to.
So thank you. So our, I wouldn't call her a friend, but definitely, in this case,
Yeah, I
for
aligned
what
with
she
her
said
on
here,
defunding the FBI. Yeah.
right? So I wouldn't say this is what kind of started it off, um, but this kind of tipped it off for a lot of people, she kind of tipped off a lot of people in regards to this.
Yeah.
So she said in a tweet, well, I think it was last week, but this is what I got from Monday. Impeach Merrick Garland and defund the corrupt FBI, end political persecution and hold those accountable that abuse their positions of power to persecute their political enemies while ruining our country. This shouldn't happen in America. Republicans must force it to stop. So honestly, I don't see an issue with this.
Yeah.
And, and like Marjorie Taylor Greene was calling for abolishing the FBI, which Briahna Joy Gray kind of retweeted and mentioned that in her radar on Rising. I believe it may have been last week or early in the week, that set off a lot of people, including TYT's own Cenk Uygur, who basically called Briahna Joy Gray a fake leftist. So Briahna basically said, I would like to talk to you more about this. Basically, like why, like unpack that, like what makes her a fake leftist. So again, I'm sure a lot of you have seen the debate by now. If you haven't, you're probably better off.
Would you like me to do an impression of it? I can do it real quick.
Sure.
Jimmy, 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 Jimmy Jam, Jam, Jimmy, like Jimothy Door, like Jim, like that's all it was. Talking to Briahna
Right.
anyway. Yeah.
So on Rising, they mentioned Briahna Joy Gray makes the case that conservatives are correct that the FBI is coming for American people. Right. And so Briahna said, Marjorie Taylor Greene is right about the FBI, bad faith or not. In today's radar, I argued that the left should take advantage of the right's new acknowledgement of systematic bias and push to abolish the FBI. An institution has always protected elite power, not the people. Anyone on the left shouldn't have an issue with this, So I definitely agree with that, given the FBI's history. But people were, again, just up in arms. Cenk Uygur were up in arms. But I think it was interesting that people saw this tweet without watching her radar to get the nuance of it.
Yes. As always.
Cenk obviously did not watch her video.
No.
So he basically looked like a jackass the entire time, which is not hard
Yeah,
to do.
he
But
complained about Mate and Greenwald, and like he was very upset.
right.
You know.
So again, we're not gonna watch too much of this. But I think because it was basically a lot of ranting on Cenk's part and Bree trying to essentially
Like-
calm him down off and on for like the first half hour.
Yes.
And then eventually after that half hour, it started to get, more civil. They were able to have a better conversation. But I wanted to play this last part because this relates to stuff that you and I have talked about,
frequently
in past episodes, but I think especially in IBN, what we're trying to accomplish with our network.
Yeah.
Which I think Bree kind of hits the hammer on the head on. So we'll watch it. I might stop it, or I might ask you to stop it just to kind of critique, and then we'll talk more about it. So let's see.
Roll the footage. Oh, it almost did it for you.
I said
go to something you did recently as an example, okay? And so you talk, and I think it's a good example. So you talked about how when Marjorie Taylor Greene says defund the FBI, hey, maybe that's not such a bad point, okay? So now that's a good place where, again, subtlety and nuance are gonna be really, really important, okay? So if I saw your segment where you were talking about, hey, look, the FBI has this terrible history of oppressing the powerless in favor of the powerful. That's totally true. We totally agree, okay? And if you're getting agreement from the right wing, now this is important, but in an earnest way, about police reform, law enforcement reform, what did we talk about? What did I say earlier? Take yes for an answer, right? So far, okay, that's good, agreed, right? But then I think it's incumbent to clarify, but the right wing doesn't actually mean it. It's not like you're gonna get Marjorie Taylor, hold on, let me finish and then you respond. It's not like you're gonna get Marjorie Taylor Greene to go, oh my God, you're so right. We should do police reform. These cops are being so abusive towards African Americans. No, what she's trying to say is if we get in charge, we're not gonna let them hold us accountable. We're gonna destroy rule of law by getting rid of anyone at the FBI who doesn't agree with us politically. Don't you see that?
So if you watch my clip, the first sentence and also the last paragraph is all about exactly that. So yeah, I agree.
Okay, great. But then I'm gonna show a clip, a tweet of Marjorie Taylor Greene agreeing with you, and then I wanna get your reaction to it. So I'm not doing this without you. We didn't do it on the show and go ha or anything like that. And in fact, I'm genuinely curious what your reaction to it. So let's look at that. So here, in response to you saying Marjorie Taylor Greene is right about the FBI, she says our government has become an institution that protects and serves the elites while the people suffer under the American last ruling class. We must defund the FBI, dismantle the Department of Justice, and gut the agencies of political biases and persecutions. I believe in the people. So what I see there, and I'm curious what you see, is her pretending that the right wing is populist and that they're doing this on behalf of the American people. When in reality, what she's saying is, if we get back in charge, there ain't gonna be no rule of law. We're gonna take out the Department of Justice, we're gonna take out the FBI, then they're gonna run roughshod. I do not agree to that at all. So I'm curious what your take on it is.
I think it was pretty funny since like millions of thousands of leftists, she also seems to have not watched the video because I doubt that she would retweet a video where she was called a broken clock who's only right twice a day and a bad faith actor. So I am a co-host at Rising, and Rising's audience is a much more conservative audience than what you have here at TYT or what I have at Bad Faith. And when you're speaking to people who are not there for you, Robbie's been on the show much longer than I have, and the audience is largely there for him. They're very libertarian in their bent. They are anti-establishment. They're frustrated with corporate parties, but they've definitely leaned right, especially on cultural issues. I find that I'm able to get more engagement with the video and more engagement with my points that I think are substantive. I spent most of my video talking about communism. Now the FBI has been an enemy of the left. To meet them where they are and say, look, the left is as concerned, nay, more concerned about the issue than the right. And here's the real people who are advocating for this, and not in a self-interested way. And the point I make at the end of the video is, I don't believe Marjorie Taylor Greene is acting in good faith, but I believe you might be. And to the extent that you, the audience, is acting in good faith, here's what we should do: come over to the left. I'm addressing conservative audiences, or kind of partyless audiences, people who are quote unquote persuadable voters. I'm not doing this for Marjorie Taylor Greene's notice or interest. I'm doing, because she is in fact obviously a bad faith actor, but you have to address the people who see her as acting in good faith. That's comms. Just because I know her and she is a bad actor, but some of the people in the audience are people who genuinely believe what she's saying. So the point is to say, okay, let me just accept on face value that you really are into this. Let me tell you what the FBI really is, and let's develop a plan on my own turf about how to address this issue. I talked to the boys over at the Vanguard earlier today, and they raised some interesting points about how, like, well, if she is able to set the agenda, her version of getting rid of the FBI is going to be all about protecting, yes, elite power, the way that the FBI has always done, and avoiding accountability. I think that's a really legitimate point. That is why, instead of, I don't know, spending a long day attacking me on the internet, what I would love for leftists to be doing is to think critically and get our historians and our theorists together and think critically about what it would look like to either restructure or abolish the FBI, so that it really did become about accountability for elites instead of harassing leftists and other marginalized groups as it has done historically.
But Briahna, do you get that?
But we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
You know, like basically what Briahna has talked about essentially is kind of the basis of organizing.
Yeah.
You know, like it's one thing for a politician to kind of say, like, especially on the right, who might take a lefty talking point and be like, oh, I support this. Fine. Okay.
Right.
So, but then as Briahna Joy Gray said, you know, okay, you know, take it to the people, because especially within the right wing, you know, and this is what I'm being in this space for a while, like this is what I've learned, you know, it's not so much, you know, like people in government, you know, that we really need to kind of convince, is the working class.
Yeah.
That we need to convince. And I think generally, like, I'm sure that I could talk to people who identify on the right, you know, like, but would agree that the FBI would need to be abolished. Now, I think there's going to be something that I'm going to relate to this later, but I think we associate a lot of bills and a lot of policy with personalities. Like the idea of like Medicare for all, for example, like people associate that with Bernie, you know, but that shouldn't be the case. That should be something in terms of the people, which now, you know, according to, you know, like recent studies, about, I would say like 70% of the country now supports Medicare for all,
Right.
you know, and about half Republicans also support it. So, you know, so now it's a very popular policy, you know.
Well,
so
that's
the
also
idea
with,
that I think
with this specific issue, defunding, like getting rid of the FBI or defunding it or whatever does not, it's like Cenk specifically and like a few others in this fake leftist, which that's the real fake leftist, in my opinion. You know, that it's like they will cheer on broader reach of three-letter agencies just because they go after the team they don't like.
Right.
You know, and that's irresponsible, one, like, but then to act like that's the correct position to take and be high and mighty over it, like, I don't understand either. Like,
Right.
you know, it's
You know,
like his argument was essentially Marjorie Taylor Greene is bad, therefore, you know, don't you think that she's acting in like bad faith when she says this? Which, like, if I was talking to Marjorie Taylor Greene, I'm not going to tell her that then.
Right.
Like,
And it's funny, like, and this is one thing I will critique Bree on, was Henry Quayle was also rated by the FBI.
yeah.
You know, no one has mentioned that. It's so
Fred
funny.
Hampton
like,
was murdered by the, like, I mean, you
but
could
it's
go.
funny, you know, like I feel like people on the left, especially when this happened, were calling, me included, were calling that out immediately. Like, and
Yeah.
now, like, I think to kind of justify the fact that it was Trump, that now a lot of the boutique left are kind of mentioning Malcolm X, MLK, Fred Hampton, you know, all those people, you know, who were, you know, assassinated by the FBI, like as kind of like the gotcha, you
Right.
know. But it's like we've been talking about this, you know, especially as Black people, we've always had, you know, I think generally in this country a very like kind of like, we always have given like the FBI, well, cops in general, the side eye, you know. But it's the idea that Bria is saying, you know, you got to take it to the people, because especially that could be an opportunity for them to learn, you know, and be like, okay, let's see where we connect. Let's see, you know, what we can study and research as far as, you know, what is the reality of, in this case, of the FBI and all of that. And let's start making demands, you know, as far as what legislation should be like in connection with that, you know. So that's how you build coalitions, you know. But of course, because it's the idea of like, oh, a right winger said it, and if you're on the left, you agree with it, then somehow that equates you to being a right-winger.
You being right-winger, right? Like it's like secret right wing. They're all playing secret Hitler at home,
right?
You know,
which makes no sense, because it's like it shouldn't be about the person. I don't care who says it.
Right.
If it's right, it's right. Doesn't matter who says it. You know, it's a matter, and Bree will get into this in the second half, but it's like, but yeah, lots of people have said the FBI is shit. So call people to that, bring people around that idea and organize around that.
Right.
So let's continue. The second part.
Go to something you did recently as an example, okay? And you
that's where we left off, where we were like,
I'm addressing conservative audiences, or kind of
like right in there
is acting in good faith. Here's what we should do. Come over to the left. And she's a bad actor, but some of the people in the audience are people points about how like, well, if she is able to set the agenda, her version of getting rid of the FBI is going to be.
Briahna, do you get that when at a moment when the FBI is finally doing something right and holding an elite like an ex-president accountable on his massive law breaking, that when you say Marjorie Taylor Greene is right, that it appears to some, I understand your point that you're making about reaching out to the right-wing audience that's watching. I totally get it. And from time to time, I think that makes sense politically, okay? But again, we need nuance here. But in this time, it allows them to say, you see that? Reasonable people on the left agree with us. The FBI is political, and they're targeting Donald Trump based on politics. That it seems.
But I didn't say.
I know, and that's why I'm asking you about
Marjorie Taylor Greene in that tweet.
They definitely are.
Taylor Greene's quote tweet. She doesn't even make that argument.
But you know that that's the argument she's saying in this context.
Well,
she tweeted about how defund the FBI right after the raid. You know that that's what it's about. No, what I'm asking, Briahna, is do you see how it might be perceived as helping their talking point that the FBI is targeting Trump unfairly and for political reasons?
The right is exploiting this moment for what they want, and I'm exploiting this moment for what I want. That's all I can do. I, Briahna Joy Gray, with my small platform and 60,000 YouTube subscribers, are not platforming or influencing Marjorie Taylor Greene, a sitting congresswoman's behavior. I think that that's laughable. But what I think is very irresponsible is for the left not to take advantage of the genuine interest that many people have across the political spectrum in holding the FBI accountable. Cops sometimes arrest bad guys and do the right thing. Sometimes cops stop a rape in progress and capture someone who's been drunk driving before they can hurt someone. Sometimes that happens. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to continue to advocate for overwhelming police reform, abolishment, or whatever it is, because that's the right thing to do. And we need to be coming up with structural alternatives to do the things that cops are supposed to be doing. while not covering for all of the misconduct and the structural problems with the police force, just because sometimes they behave right. And I think the same thing with the FBI. It is completely cogent to say, I believe Donald Trump should be held accountable for whatever crime he might have committed. At the same time that you say the organization that's undertaking the search has a credibility issue because it spent 85% of its resources, as I talk about in my clip, 85% of its time going after people like Muhammad Ali, Elvis Presley, and Martin Luther King and Fred Hampton, and only 15% of its time going after the Ku Klux Klan.
But today they're going after Donald Trump. So then that gets to the issue of genuine, whether they're genuine or not. And I think this is-
Of course they're not, and I said that many times in my radar.
Okay, so but let's break that down. And this is a good moment. This is a good thing to, I think, end on. So look, if I sense the right wing is genuine, they're actually voting with us. So for example, they're anti-war. They're saying the president needs to get congressional authorization, and they voted that way. Great, no problem. A vote's a vote. It's as genuine as it gets, right? So I say yes to that. But if they say, hey, Cenk, I care about law enforcement reform, right when Donald Trump's getting busted by law enforcement. And by the way, if we win, I'm not gonna do any of the reform you want. Instead, I'm gonna make it.
Go ahead.
I want to pause here for a second.
Yeah.
Cenk just then conflated fucking justice reform being a right-wing thing. I mean, I know he's not, he's like trying to make an example, but he's also saying that that's what they're saying. No, they're saying defund the FBI. Like, which I wouldn't say is necessarily law enforcement. Like, that's not something I think about in law enforcement reform. That's like government overreach reform. Like,
right.
You know.
And it's funny, you know, and I think I could say this here. You know, they're talking about Trump. You know,
right?
Of course,
but
they didn't talk about Henry Quayle, but whatever. But
I mean, this is still Cenk stuck on Russiagate for now. Right. He's still stuck. He still thinks that the walls are closing in any day now. Like
no one, to my knowledge, besides RBN and maybe a couple of other channels, like Tara had the chairman of the Uygur movement on Monday.
Right. Yeah.
No one has talked about that.
No. Democracy Now! And Tara Reid. That's it.
Right.
Like, I mean, Nico's talked about tons of people have talked about the actual raid that the FBI committed on the Uygur movement on a 70-year-old man with drones, flashbangs, and a tank. They sent a tank to this guy's house. Like, you know, not any of that's talked about. The TYT will never have someone like that on, you know. Right. So, but I just find it funny that they like, now if you believe in justice reform and are right wing, you're also bad because Trump.
Right. No, right, because of Trump. And that's the thing.
Yes.
It's Trump is getting the attention, you know, so because Trump is bad and because now people are defending him, then you by proxy must be a bad person too. You know, like you're trying, like it's somehow twisting the idea of like, oh, you're protecting Trump. No, this is not the idea of protecting Trump. It's the idea that throughout history, the FBI has done shady shit.
They're coming after the African People's Socialist Party for McCarthyite nonsense.
Right.
And this is just one instance at the FBI, let alone the CIA and the ATF, which I think also should go. You know, but like, anyway, we'll finish this up.
Way worse. Yeah. I go, well, that's not genuine. And this is not a moment that I want to help them with their completely disingenuous concern about law enforcement.
I think that's
make it genuine. Right. Call their bluff.
Right. That's politics.
Should be.
That's politics.
Let's see if they do something on it. I'll play ball. Like,
it's an excellent point. You know how I would nail them on this? Wouldn't it be incredible if in response to this moment, the left actually drafted a plan that they could vote on to actually reform the FBI in a meaningful
Thank you, Bree.
way? Wouldn't it be incredible if instead of letting Marjorie Taylor Greene stomp and posture on the internet about this sort of thing, that we called her bluff with a piece of legislation that it would actually do what the left thinks would be a good response right now, a response that creates accountability for Donald Trump, but which also cuts at the meat of some of the skepticism that the right has about whether or not the FBI can conduct an impartial investigation. That's what I would really love to see in this moment. Call her to the mat, force the vote, make her prove whether or not she is a good faith actor or a bad faith actor. I think that would be much more productive in this context than sitting around just saying online she's a bad faith actor. Well, we all know that, but the people who support her or the people who are open to having this conversation, they don't know that. And there's only one way they can know that. It's by good faith actors getting in there and actually doing what we think should be done instead of just criticizing and complaining and critiquing others.
So,
Right. So basically with this, it's like the idea.
All right, welcome to the conversation.
Oh,
Sorry.
no, we're done.
Yeah.
Like, couple of things. And then I think there's another video there, but
I got it
it's
here.
like a minute.
Yep.
Okay. But, so a couple of things. One, Bree made a very good point that I think a lot of people made. It's not the idea of, like people on the left are supporting Marjorie Taylor Greene. Like we know she's shit, you know, but in the way that Marjorie Taylor Greene authentic or not, is capitalizing on an issue for her benefit. Bree makes the argument like, okay, she says the left, I'm going to use the squad. Like, why can't the squad do the same thing to capitalize it for their benefit, you know? And we've noticed that with the squad that they've had chance after chance after chance after chance after chance to do that. They didn't force the vote, you know, for, you know, bringing Medicare for all. They didn't force the vote to get $15 minimum wage. They didn't force the vote as far as, you know, funding Capitol Police more. They didn't force the vote as far as, you know, giving money to Ukraine, even though Cori Bush was like, yeah, I agree that we should support Ukraine, but I have doubts as far as where the money is going.
Right.
You know? So, you know, so
I mean,
the critique,
not to mention nothing on Julian. In fact, if anything, Cenk has like now called Julian a liar, right? Like, you know, on top of, I'm pretty sure they endorsed Biden, right? During the
apparently Julian is an anti-Semite now because he supports Palestine.
Right.
You know?
They're literally going to go against. I mean, it's almost like Anna took notes with Madeleine Albright. You know,
right?
Like,
you know,
like it's crazy to me that like it's still Julian. No mention of Tara during that whole Biden, you know, situation. Like, I mean, anyway, you're going to talk about another lady who's deciding to take.
Yeah, and it's funny because like it's funny now after the announcement that was made on TYT today. Because guess who agreed at least at one point with what Briahna was saying?
I wonder who.
Yeah. Let's play the clip and see what old friend Nina Turner has to
what
say.
Christian Small is doing, you know, there are Starbucks right here in my city, whether it's Clifton Avenue or West 6th Street or the one in Maple Heights, or excuse me, not Maple Heights, Mayfield Road in Cleveland Heights, just all of the various Starbucks right here in the greater Cleveland area. All of those wins and attempts to give people so much courage. What happened in Staten Island probably, you know, is owed to what they were able to do in Bessemer, Alabama. Even though they didn't come with the brass ring, it was just one more step in the right direction and one more move to motivate people to keep on fighting. So it's the combination of all of these things that I believe that the progressive movement should look at as we critique and judge ourselves and not get caught up in what the mainstream media has to say about this movement, because the overwhelming majority of the American people are right where this movement is. They might not, Crystal, and they might not, Kyle, call themselves progressives. if we take the label off and you just talk to people about, is your health care enough? Is it serving you? Are you making enough money on your job? Would you like to see things change in this society that gives you more than a fighting chance to live out your greatest greatness? Most people, no matter how they identify politically, are going to say, yeah, I would like to see more done. That unionist movement is an example of that.
Unity.
You got people who were probably Bernie-crats, Clintonites, Trumpites, Green Party, no party, all
You need to play
uniting
that
based on what
soundbite.
they had in common.
I gotta
And what
find
they
it.
had in common was a drive and a
find
determination to
Richie
say,
doing
we
it.
deserve more. We deserve better. We're going to put our political ideology on the side and fight like hell to get that better. And that's benefits, that's wages, and that's work conditions. This is the roadmap that the progressive movement needs to use so that we keep on fighting. We cannot get weary in well-doing.
Exactly.
Right. So Nina, a few months ago, when it was okay, basically said, we need to form coalitions with people who are not like us in order to get shit done.
Right.
Which I think, in light of the fact now that we now know she's going to be a full-time employee of TYT now, basically, this in a way, it's slapping like Briahna Joy Gray in the face, essentially, because really,
Yeah.
and I think it's interesting, like, in the midst of what Briahna was saying, Nina didn't come to defend her,
No.
which I think, but I think really, and Nick, I believe, made this point, now, like, because Briahna basically has said now that, oh, Bernie abandoned the movement, which is something that we've been saying for a while, but now as she being the former press secretary for Bernie, is now saying, basically Bernie ain't shit.
Right.
All the Bernie-crats basically are now basically like, Briahna, you're dead to me, basically. So I think now, and I think especially with TYT, because they're making basically bank off the squad and Bernie, they can't, she poses a problem for
Right.
them. So it's a lot easier now to smear Brie now than to kind of deal with the reality of like, if you want things passed, you have to build coalitions to people who are not like you. And this is something that I've been very sick of, like as of late, because it's almost like for people who are like who want Medicare for all, it's like only lefties, especially if you're the purest of lefties, that you should have Medicare for all. If you're a right winger, be damned with you. Like that's kind of like the attitude that I feel among people on the left is that attitude. Like I remember like last year, I had a guy connect with me on Twitter who is a Republican, asked me if he should attend the marches for Medicare for all. And he asked that because he felt like, because it was so like intense on the left during that time, that he felt like he felt like he wouldn't be included, or he felt like he would be attacked if he went.
Yeah.
Like that's how bad it gets sometimes. Like when people on the right agree with us, then it's like, and again, as Bree said, and I don't think this is an issue necessarily with the working class, but I think more so with politicians, it's the idea of like, as she said, call their bluff out. Squad, where are you? If you're a Democrat and if you believe in those two, call their bluff.
Right.
Form legislation. Bernie has done this many times.
Right.
We're on the right in order to get things.
Fred Hampton. I mean, you could go back to almost all, like, that's who you're trying to reach. Technically, like you need them to support you and not like, anyway, I feel like we've said all these things multiple times to these people and they still don't listen,
Right. And, and we've said it a lot at INN, like this is what we're trying to do on this network and the show is to try to build coalitions and
without
help us
labels.
Understand, the idea of what, as we
Right.
say, like labels are bad, say independent. We want to take off the labels of these issues that have become so tribal, in politics and really focus on what people need so we can activate together, as a community so that we can help, these people. And there might actually be some tangible ways that we can do that.
Yeah.
So definitely stay tuned for that. But here's a tweet that I found like the other day that I want to pull up.
Yeah, it's Most of the pushback, right?
From Screen legend Anthony Quinn's undershirt. Okay. But he said, most of the pushback you're getting on, I guess to Bree, you're getting on this is because of tribalism. About a month ago, I simply asked if people can be friends with somebody who is conservative, and I got yelled at. Someone also implied that I'm not a pure enough lefty because my father is conservative.
Mm.
This is bullshit, you know?
Yeah.
And I feel like this happens a lot on the left, especially. You know, like if you connect or like if you agree like with a person who is seemingly on the right, then there's something wrong with you.
Mm.
When the idea should be like, especially if they're in the working class, no, actually we agree. Let's talk about it and let's see how we can, you know, work together to actually get this shit done.
Yeah.
You know? So I think I have, is that it?
I think so.
Oh no,
you have this
no,
one.
I had one more. I thought I did. So I had one more tweet, you know. So I mentioned this last week. I tweeted out, it's about time that the true left stops getting into these petty personality wars and start to learn what organization is, so we can actually get something done, something policy-wise that's not a crumb. Many of these leftists are gatekeepers. We have to take the power away from them too. And what I mean is, it's like, I think especially in the space, who is dictating a lot of what we should think about or what we should be doing or not doing is mostly these big channels like TYT, you know? And it's like, they're afraid of us because we're actually, one, working class and like can actually speak to the issues in a way that they necessarily can't, because we're on the ground and we see this every day while they're in their studios, many of them, you know, kind of shielded and isolated from the realities of what working class people are going through. So the idea of organizing is the idea of like, we're taking power away from the elite.
Yeah.
You know, so basically in this tweet, I'm saying the people within the space, like in the space, like who are really real about actually getting something for the working class as far as policy, those people that, you know, that we need to take power from are these bigger channels, you know, because they're pushing us towards the wrong thing, which is essentially pushing us towards the Democratic Party, who has done, well, both parties, but I think right now, especially the Democratic Party, who's done shit for people.
Yeah.
You know, so I think really, and I think Bree said it beautifully, you know, I don't agree with Bree with everything all the time, but she was definitely right on this. And I think that's definitely the part of the clip that I wanted to show and kind of encourage you all. Like, these personality beefs, like, oh, Jimmy Dore bad and like whatever else, is just a distraction. Because you know what? Like, I challenge any one of these trolls or any one, like one of these people who have disagreements, you know, just as far as policy and any of this.
Yeah.
Come on the show. Like, come on the show. I know Nick has offered any of these people who kind of disagree, like kind of say have Jimmy Dore derangement syndrome. He's offered, you know, on his Collin shows, if you have a disagreement, talk about it. They don't. So it's like, either you know that we're talking, right? Even we know that we're talking about the right thing, or you really don't have shit to say.
Yeah.
You know? So, you know, and like, as I'm saying this, like, I think my mind is somewhat changing on things I've said in terms that I would never go on certain channels. Like, I think I need to kind of call myself out a little bit on that, because, you know, I think especially in light of this, if we are truly wanting to build coalitions and understanding one among each other, we have to talk.
Yeah.
So I think I'm definitely kind of changing my stance on that a little bit somewhat. But I think ultimately, you know, it's the idea of like, stick to the policy, not the personality. And we'll get a lot farther ahead than what we are right now on the left.
Yeah, I mean, you know, human low solidarity, talking about the gatekeepers gives them power. I agree and disagree.
Agreed, but I think if we talk about them in the right way of what we need to do
as gatekeepers,
as far as taking away that power from them, I think it's valid. Like, to get caught up in the drama of it all, you know, like, yes, I think that's definitely true. But I think ultimately it's like, I wanted to play that clip, not so much for Cenk, but what Bree was saying that I think is kind of pertinent to what we said on this channel before and other channels have said, you know, like, you have to talk to people who are not like you in order to build coalitions. You know, that's not talked about as much on the left anymore. You know, so that's something we need to kind of get back to in order to try and attempt to get something done. Because that's how they're winning. That's how the divisions are made. It's like, this person is for this policies and it's bad. So like, therefore that person or anyone that's associated with them is bad.
Right.
Which is what Cenk tried to do with Bree, and Bree basically
slapped it away.
Down within really like within 10 minutes.
Yeah. So, but anyway,